Greetings, astronauts, and welcome back to Astro Candy. Hello, I'm your host, Raven, and I'm excited to welcome holistic nutritionist, mindset coach, and author Janna Johnson onto the Astro Candy podcast. Today, we are talking about our gut health, how it affects our well-being, and the best foods to support it, and of course, the foods to avoid. Janna overcame the impossible when she healed herself from chronic Lyme disease. And not just that, but hypothyroidism and major gut issues. So she teaches others how to feel their best and live their best life by healing their gut and also their mind. So Janna is also a motivational speaker, as you can imagine. She's got an incredibly inspiring story. She's a top podcast host and most recently, a #1 best-selling author in humanistic psychology and the #1 new release in women's health with her revival, Unfuck Your Mind, Shatter Your Limiting Beliefs to Become Who You Are Meant to Be. It really is an honor to have Janna on this episode of the Astro Candy podcast. You'll hear her inspiring story of overcoming Lyme disease, which is the catalyst to her career as a holistic nutritionist. She credits whole foods and functional medicine as the cure for her Lyme disease and her thyroid problems and her gut issues, that and her mindset shift. You know, Janna reminds us in this episode how eliminating our limiting beliefs can really set us up for success, why our internal belief system affects what we can do, what we can accomplish, who we can become. So we talk about that. We talk about the importance of finding your why, the importance of trusting your gut, and the importance of being your own wellness advocate. Then we get down to the nitty-gritty. Janna teaches us about the gut, what makes up the gut, and why sugar, quote, feeds all diseases. This is something I did not know, but when it came down to sugar versus alcohol and which one is worse for us, I think you'll be surprised to know the answer. She points out popular gut irritants, offers healthier alternatives, and encourages us to be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to our health. We get into a discussion about Big Pharma, why it doesn't promote functional medicine, which functional medicine can ultimately cure diseases. So why isn't Big Pharma really pushing this? And how big food is contributing to disease. She tells us which foods we should be eating to support our gut health and also manage our blood sugar, which is very important. And Janna explains the symptoms of a leaky gut. We've all heard that term before, but we talk about exactly what it means, how it affects our health, and how to prevent it. And she also emphasizes the importance of spending just a little bit more money on healthy whole foods right now instead of a lot more money on medical issues in the future. This is a really incredible episode. I mean, between Janna's story and her knowledge as a nutritionist, as a mindset coach, and just her knowledge of life, you know, her own life experiences, this is really incredible, really powerful. I hope you love this episode. If you do, it would mean the most to me if you would rate 5 stars on this podcast and tell a friend. Share this episode with a friend. All right, enjoy our conversation. Janna Johnson, welcome to the Astro Candy podcast. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm really, really good.
I am delighted that you're on the podcast. This is going to be such an incredible conversation. Like I can already feel it based on the conversation that we were having ahead of recording. So I'm excited to get to know you. I'm excited to introduce you to my audience. This is really a topic I haven't really touched on this podcast in particular, really getting into health and wellness and also from a holistic perspective. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, your story, how you became a nutritionist, an author, a mindset expert. Just start from the beginning.
Absolutely. I believe that there's always a beginning to where we get to, right? And sometimes we have to go through something really, really difficult in order to discover what our true purpose is here on earth. And so there were a couple of different catalysts for me. So I am a nutritionist, a holistic nutritionist, and I focus on gut health. And I'm also a mindset expert, and I'm also a narcissistic abuse expert. And those came about from going through some really, really tough times. So in April of 2012, I got a bullseye rash on my right inner thigh. I, at that time, had not heard of Lyme disease, and I ignored the rash. I didn't know I was one of the few 30% that actually develop the bullseye rash when they get infected with Lyme disease. And so I ignored it. And 6 months later, life as I knew it pretty much ended. And Lyme disease bacteria it gets into your joints. It's like a little corkscrew shaped bacteria. It can also get into your brain, which is where it infected me at. And so at the time, I have three kids, but my two oldest at the time were young. They were 1 and 3. And I went from super mom to a shell of a woman. And it took 14 doctors over about a year's time. Um, and absolutely had no idea what was making me so sick. I had brain fog, derealization, confusion, severe anxiety, panic attacks, muscle aches, lethargy, memory loss. Um, it's like my entire body turned against me. And, you know, conventional medicine was all I ever knew. At that time, functional medicine wasn't really heard of as much. It definitely people didn't understand it like they do now. And so as I'm going doctor after doctor and I'm being told, now you have hypothyroidism, and I'm like, why? I'm 30. I always knew deep down that there was something else going on. My body's just not all of a sudden have all these issues. Something else is causing it, right? And I think sometimes people stop and they're just like, oh, well, I have hypothyroidism. It runs in the family. And they stop and they accept that.
Mm.
And I just felt like there's something more going on. This is not just my thyroid. It's not just my adrenals. It's not just my reproductive hormones. It's not just gut issues. All of these things that I was told. And I had a miscarriage. I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage at 10 weeks. And at that point, I really felt like my body was like a human trash can. And I was going through a really hard time. And that's when I found functional medicine. And it resonated with me because they look for the root cause, not just here's some band aids. You're having anxiety, you're having depression, so take this. And when I went to that doctor, and they're in Connecticut, the first thing they asked me was about Lyme disease. And I was like, no, I've been tested twice for that conventional test. Well, conventional testing for Lyme disease is crap. And after tons and tons of different testing, come to find out, a year and a half after that bullseye rash, not only did I have Lyme disease, but I had several strands of it. And I was super, super infected with it in chronic Lyme. Well, Lyme disease is not a disease where it's like, well, this is what you do to get well. And they don't ever know what's going to work for someone and how that person's body is going to react. And so I tried all sorts of stuff, the typical antibiotic and the Zane protocol and you name it. And I was getting sicker and sicker, and to the point that I almost took my own life. And my two kids at this point, they're 2 and 4. My two of my three were 2 and 4. And I just remember the day that I was going to take my life. And what stopped me was my kids. And I was like, God didn't put me here and put those kids here for this, to have a mom this sick. So I told God that day that if I'm meant to go through this to help one other person, send me through it. But if not, I can't live like this anymore. What I didn't realize at that time, it took me about a year or so later to realize, is that when I made that mindset shift and I chose to believe that I could get well, nothing told me I would get well. It's like, this is a life sentence. This is how it's going to be. Maybe you'll feel better, but you'll never fully eradicate it from your body. I chose to believe differently that day. And when I chose to believe differently, my actions followed. So that led me to learning a lot about gut health and food. And I learned that food is either your medicine or your poison. Now, you might be listening and thinking, well, but I'm not sick. Yes, but you don't want to get sick, and you don't want your body to be a place that a disease wants to reside or wants to grow into, right? So I ended up completely eradicating Lyme from my body. I did a very specific essential oil treatment that I did a lot of studying on to kill off the bacteria. I also had to do a whole lot on my lymphatic system, which is our body's detoxification system, in order to have it leave my body properly, because you can't just kill the bacteria off and then have all the nasty toxins floating around, right? You got to get them out. Um, and you have to think about at this point the symptoms that I'm going through, they're magnified times 10 when you go through a die off, right? So it took a lot of mental strength to be able to constantly remember what I have to do and to get well, right? Because nothing was promised. I'm in this black tunnel and I don't know which way to walk to get out, right? Everywhere I turn, I hit a wall. I don't even know if I can get out. It's just that I wanted to get out and I didn't stop. And as I continued to no longer feed the disease with sugars and carbs and the foods that disease like to eat off of, I began to kill off the Lyme disease between starving it out and the essential oils. And then I began to work on healing my gut. Well, I ended up fully eradicating Lyme from my body. And then I ended up healing my thyroid to where I haven't taken thyroid medication in 10 years. And I completely healed my gut and got rid of every other disease and symptom that was going on. And that led me to becoming a holistic nutritionist because I wanted to show others how to get well, and that, hey, the magic isn't in some overnight pill that doesn't exist. It's in our body's innate ability to heal if given the right environment. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, that's how I became a holistic nutritionist. So becoming a mindset expert, that actually happened years later, after going through a tumultuous divorce. I have 3 kids, and the unthinkable happened in my marriage and the ultimate betrayal. And that honestly was probably more heartbreaking than the Lyme disease, because I went from a full-time mom, never being away from my kids since they were born, to losing them to 50% of the time. And nothing can describe that emotional pain. But going through that, learning that that person was a narcissist and what I had been enduring for 14 years, that's what led me to becoming a mindset expert. And that also ties into with the mindset shift that I had to make in order to overcome Lyme disease. So my book originally was going to be just about Lyme disease. And as I started to go through the book mapping process, I realized that that book was inside of me. And my book is Unf Your Mind. I'm not gonna say it out loud unless you want me to.
You can if
But
you want.
but unfuck your mind, and subtlety is my specialty. Um, but but my book is all about shattering limiting beliefs. We all have limiting beliefs, right? And those are formed from growing up. And shattering your limiting beliefs is our key to freedom. So that is how I became who I am today.
Wow. Your story is incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, I agree with you absolutely. Like, to get to the highest highs, you have to go through those lowest lows. And what
Mhm.
stuck out to me were several things. I had to write them down so I wouldn't forget. But the why. I feel like everything we face in life, when it is just coming up against a wall or a mountain and you feel like it's impossible to climb, how am I going to get through this? And do I have the will to? I mean, you talked about that moment when you're just like, I don't know if I can actually carry on, and you found your why. In that moment it was your children, and that is so important, I think, to anybody who wants to make a change. Discovering or asking yourself, well, why? Because that is the backbone. That's what keeps you going through the shit to heal or recover or accomplish whatever it is you're setting out to do. You have to always remember your why. So that
100%.
really stuck out to me. And also what stuck out to me, because this is the Asher Kinney podcast and we get kind of like a little bit woo woo, but in manifestation, we talk about, if we're really breaking it down in like the littlest, like the most bite size, it's ask, believe, receive. Ask for what you want, but then believe it with all your heart. And that's really tied to mindset, right? You
Mhm.
kind of make this decision like, no, I'm going to heal from this diagnosis, and I'm going to completely eradicate it from my body. And you believe that wholeheartedly, it's like in your mind, it's in your heart, it's in your gut, like you're full, it's full body encompassing belief. And I truly agree with you and believe that that is how we see experience miracles in our lives, because we just believe them to our core, which is also
100%.
incredible what you
I
described.
I totally agree with you. I like we talked about before we hit record was, me just kind of learning about I've always believed in energy. And I think for the person who maybe doesn't, then I think a question to ask yourself is, do you ever get a gut feeling? Right? Do you ever feel like something's off? If so, then you do believe in energy because that's what you're feeling. And I think many of us, I know for me, I don't know about you, I went through life for the longest time ignoring my gut.
Mm,
And that's because like sometimes that you get these really strong gut reactions or feelings when you walk into a new place or a room or you meet someone and you want to doubt yourself, right? Like, well, that person hasn't done anything to me. I shouldn't be thinking that or feeling that. But I have learned to not ignore my gut. And I've also learned to not always share my gut feelings with people because sometimes that is what threw it off. I would share a feeling with someone close to me and be like, something's off about them, or I don't like the way this situation feels. And then they're like, what? Oh, no, no, no. They're fine. They're nice or whatever. It's just you. I've kind of learned to keep that to myself. So I don't know if I'm going off topic or not, but there is a whole lot about energy and gut feelings and stuff like that. And um, I had no reason to believe I would ever get well from Lyme. The data, the research, the doctors, they said otherwise. But if I would have believed them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have my book. And it's so important for people to understand that our actions really do follow our thoughts. And we really do attract what it is we put out. It's like I tell my kids, right? It's like you have a big magnet inside of you, but a lot of the times it's just turned the wrong way. And we got to flip it back around because we really are super attractors. But it all begins with believing in ourselves and in our thoughts, right?
yeah. You mentioned early on, before you were diagnosed with Lyme, that you had that gut instinct. You were like, I don't know. I feel like it's something else. You'd
Hmm.
get like the hypothyroidism or diagnosis or whatever it was. And you're like, I
Yeah,
don't know. I think it's something else. And I do think in a Western medicine context, when you're going to the doctor and you're expressing your concerns, I think this has happened to anybody, where it does feel, it's almost like you said, where, I've stopped sharing my gut feelings with people because they can be dismissive, or they can just be like, oh, like that's not it. And I think medicine in the Western context can be that way sometimes too, where it's like, I think something's wrong. And they're like, well, they're just looking at the facts and the data. And they're like, these are the tests. And so you're fine. Like everything is good, or it's this, or it's that. So
a
my
hundred
question,
percent.
yeah, yeah. So my question for you is, how can we trust our gut in those instincts when we do have these doctors with fancy degrees and data and tests telling us otherwise?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the very first keynote speech I ever gave was about that's what it was about. It was about your inner warrior and becoming your own wellness advocate. Because if I would have listened, if I would have listened to the two different tests, which by the way, it's important to note when those doctors tested for Lyme disease, I didn't even know that they were the conventional test. If it would have resonated the way it did in functional medicine, I'd have looked it up and seen that bullseye rash. But conventional tests failed me. And, the doctors could never really find what was going on. It was, well, your hormones are imbalanced. You have hypothyroidism. You're depressed. This is stress. This is just,
Mm.
you got two little kids. I was dismissed so much. It got to where doctor after doctor, I knew that they had within, 5 to 10 minute window frame of wanting to visit me, right? Because of insurance. Um, I just kept going because I knew something wasn't right. There's no way I went from being so healthy to this. I mean, it was in pure living hell every second of every day. No reprieve. And it was very off-putting how dismissive the doctors were. I can't tell you how many doctors, probably almost every damn one, that would just tell me it was just anxiety and it was or all in my head or depression.
Mm,
I never took antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. It's just because I just knew that, okay, but why? I think that my answer to this question is you got to be your own wellness advocate and you need to always ask why. Your
yeah.
body does not just turn against you. When our body talks to us through symptoms, and that's what I teach my clients, right? Your body, it kind of whispers at you. Maybe you're getting bloated. Maybe it's all just some gut issues you got going on. Maybe it's flatulence. Maybe you're belching. Maybe you're starting to have some skin disorders. You have eczema, and your hair falls out. Maybe you're getting a little bit of brain fog, not sleeping good, holding on to weight in the midsection. Your energy's low. Maybe you start to get a little anxiety. These are what I call the whispers, and then they start to get a little bit louder where your body's like, "Hey, hello." That's more about when you get like anxiety and depression.
Mm,
Brain fog gets pretty severe, and you start to get autoimmune diseases and like true imbalanced hormones. And it could be as simple as just you have a candida overgrowth in your gut, which women are very prone to, mineral deficiencies, things like that are so easy to fix at the root cause. But our body is talks to us through symptoms, and when we don't listen, it screams at us.
yeah.
And the louder, the worse your symptoms are, the more your body's screaming at you. And so you can put all the band-aids you want over it, but you got to find the root cause. And that's what I try to teach people is to be your own wellness advocate. Doctors don't know everything. I believe, and this is my personal opinion and my experience, conventional medicine has its place. And I believe it is for the major emergencies that come about, right? Or the broken arm, the flu, strep throat, all of the basic stuff you can think of, or the major surgeries, right? Things like that. But when it comes to an illness, when it comes to the unexplained and the unknown, unfortunately, conventional medicine is not, that's not what it's for because they don't teach that in school. As a nutritionist, I think doctors take like 6 to 9 hours total is all they got to do for nutrition, right? And then you have me
Wow.
that's done hundreds of hours. So, and same for gut health and things like that. But we have been trained to believe everything doctors say. And doctors are not our bosses. Some doctors have not walked in your shoes. Many that I saw, most of them, not one of them I know for sure ever had Lyme disease or the symptoms. The one that helped me the most, in Connecticut, that's where Lyme's very prevalent. They were just very understanding because they work with a lot of patients that
Mm,
have it. And finding a doctor that's supportive is everything. That can be the difference between overcoming and not. But this is your body and this is your life, and you're the boss of it and you're in control of it. And you have to be your own wellness advocate.
what you were saying about conventional medicine and its place, it makes me think of the outside versus the inside. So, like, the outside is a scrape, a cut, a broken arm, I guess you could say. Anything that you could put
Mhm.
on the outside, like a cast. And then the inside is where the work is. And it was, I can't believe you said, what, 8 to 9 hours of
I think it's even more like 6, but it's less than 10.
for what was it?
Uh,
Nutrition?
yeah, like conventional doctors, right? When they're doing all their studying for school, the nutrition part of it and gut health part, it's like 6 to 8 hours. Like that's all they get. That's nothing.
Wow. That's crazy because I just feel like, well, at least we're going to talk about it, how prevalent, gut health is and how important it is and all that. So let's get into this because this is something that has been very buzzy in the health community lately. Let's start with the very basics though. What
Okay.
makes up the gut?
Okay. Well, your gut, and this is really, really important for people to know. And this always amazes me that people don't know it. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. That's
Wow.
huge, huge. But here's the other part. Most of your neurotransmitters are produced in your gut. So if your gut health, and that's why in my niche, that's why I do gut health. If your gut health is out of whack, that is why you start to suffer from autoimmune diseases. That is why you'll have anxiety, depression, brain fog. and those always accompany each other. Like if you think about like irritable bowel syndrome, for example, right? Irritable bowel syndrome is typically accompanied by anxiety and depression. They all kind of go hand in hand. It's not a coincidence that your intuition is also referred to as the gut feeling,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Your gut is literally the key to your optimal health. Your gut health is the key to your optimal health. It's the key to your brain health. And when you heal your gut, you heal you. So when you're putting all of these artificial um, dyes in your bodies and sweeteners and processed foods and sugar, gluten, wheat, all of these things like that into your gut, you can cause an overgrowth in your gut bacteria that's not good. Like we all have candida in our gut. Every single one of us do. But when you eat too much sugar, too much processed foods, too much carbs, you get a candida overgrowth. Now, women, we are much more prone to get these, and it's very typical, right? A lot of women suffer from anxiety, depression, and brain fog. A lot of the times it's because of a candida overgrowth. And what's really, really funny about sugar is sugar feeds all diseases, right? And sugar causes these overgrowths. But all of these things, these pathogens that feed off of it, when they overgrow and there's more of them than are the good microorganisms in our gut, we actually get very strong, intense cravings for sugar. And so
Mm.
a lot of people, especially people I work with, they have a really hard time and they go through like detoxes when they quit eating sugar. Sugar's more addicting than some illegal substances. Sugar's absolute worst thing you could put into your body. And so I can't express enough the importance of your gut health. And people always ask me, what do I not eat? Right? If you could stay away from one thing, it would be sugar. Monitor your sugar intake. A glass of orange juice, I mean, like Simply brand orange juice, it's pure orange juice. It's like over 20 grams of sugar at 8 ounces. You shouldn't get 20 grams of sugar in a day unless you're a little kid and you're burning it off constantly. So, your gut health is your key to ultimate health. And when you think about 80% of your immune system is in your gut, and then you think about how people eat, right? Like
Mm.
I got 3 kids, my two oldest are teenagers, and and I'm a nutritionist, and it's hard to get them to eat healthy. The amount of artificial of dyes, sweeteners, and sugar in our products today, it's alarming. It's alarming what is sold in a grocery store and a convenience store.
So, as somebody who more recently started eating healthier whole foods, more recently, meaning like in the last 3 to 5 years, I was growing up on fast food, growing up on junk food. That was just the easiest for my parents at the time,
Yeah.
working as hard as they could to put food on the table. Like a lot of families are in this situation. Maybe they don't have access to, or it's
Yep.
just cheaper and more convenient to go for those more processed foods and ingredients. And so, what I noticed when I was starting to wane, and it was a waning process, let me tell you, like, I don't think I could cold turkey that shit because I was fiending for sugar. That's what it
Yes.
would be. It would be these intense
Yeah.
cravings to just get a hit of, I don't know, whatever I could because
It's
I'm
like a
just like,
drug addict. It's a
yes,
temporary
yes.
boost of your serotonin, and it's the same as illegal substances. I'm not going to name them, but in nutrition school, you go over the studies, the scientific data on the rats, right? The lab rats, and they put out an illegal substance and then they had sugar, and the sugar was 10 times more addicting than the illegal substance was. I was
Wow.
absolutely shocked. So
This
when you
might be a
say that about how hard it was for you to overcome, I understand. I understand that. It's very difficult.
I think I know the answer to this question, and it might be a silly
It
one.
looks like sugar.
No, but sugar's not regulated, right? Like
Oh,
anybody can
no,
put
it's
as
not. It's
much
not.
of sugar into anything.
It's not regulated. My youngest, I have 15, 13, and 8, and I call him my little man, Broden. He's 8 years old, and boy, is he his mama. And I think he hears me talk about things all the time. So he has himself started to pay attention to how much sugar is in things. And he actually told me this 2 days ago. He's like, Mom, do you know how many grams of sugar is in the Sonic Blast? I was like, actually, I don't. He goes, it's 120 grams. I looked it up and he is right. In a medium sized Sonic Blast, it's 120 grams of sugar.
That's crazy.
Here's a good thing to know, and just always like to give people as much information as I can give, right? About that's why I shared about the immune system in your gut and your neurotransmitters, and sugar's the worst thing, right? People always ask me that. How many grams of sugar should I have in a day? For a woman, honestly, you probably need to stay under about 12 grams of sugar. And that seems like, what? But here's the thing, people look at the back of a nutrition label and they look at the grams of sugar, and sugar alcohols count, which, by the way, sugar alcohols are typically gut irritants and very gas producing. So look at the nutrition label. And if you're like, oh, but this only has 6 grams of sugar. Okay. But that's just that one thing. You're going to eat stuff and drink stuff all throughout the day. And if you add it all up, and this is a really good thing to do, maybe take one day and add up how many grams of sugar you consume in one day. And it will alarm and disgust most people. It's a lot. There was a study just the other day, and I think it's about kids. Kids typically average over 100 grams easily, if not 200 a day. That makes my brain go crazy.
Well, no wonder we're all kind of growing up and staying on that path of just like reaching for more and more sugar. Does this include fruit sugar, strawberries and
So here's the
bananas?
thing, and it really depends on where you are with your health, right? Like when I was overcoming Lyme disease, I couldn't have anything that had sugar in it. I mean, Snickers bar, banana didn't matter. Sugar was sugar for the bacteria, right? I'm healthy now and I have been for over 10 years, so I can have a banana, but I'm not going to go eat that Snickers bar. The thing is how it is on your actual blood sugar, right? Is in the glycemic index of it. So for kids, it's okay if kids eat fruit. That's totally fine, but it doesn't need to be at every meal of the day. And that's what I see. I see they have the fruit, but then they're also going to have the waffles and the syrup,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
So, or they're going to have the sodas. Oh, sodas are the worst things to put in your body. There's healthy alternatives. In my house, I only will do Zevia. I do sparkling waters, and then I have Zevia. Zevia, Zevia is like a replacement for sodas, and it's sweetened with stevia. And they have root beer and Dr. Zevia and Coca-Cola and things like that. Um, but but like Pepsi, Dr. Pepper, those soda products, not only do they have a disgusting amount of sugar in them, but they also have all of these other chemicals and man-made products, man-made things in there that are just really, really bad for your gut health and your endocrine system. So it is no coincidence that there was a study just the other day that was comparing where we are today in obesity and mental disorders compared to 20 years ago. And it's like over 300 times in the amount. And that is 100% because of what we're putting in our body and the lack of exercise.
The discussion about soda or pop,
Hmm.
where I'm from.
Yeah.
um, what is worse, soda or alcohol on your gut?
Oh, that depends. It really, really does. And honestly, it has to do with the sugar.
Mm,
Neither one are great for you. But if you're gonna have a vodka, if you're old enough to drink, if you're gonna have a vodka soda, like sparkling water and a vodka and lime versus a Pepsi, the Pepsi is gonna be way worse for you.
wow.
So here's the thing, and this is what I try to teach people is it's okay to drink. I like to have a drink. That's totally fine. But when you mix the sugar with the alcohol, that's where you get messed up. That's where you're going to get buzzed fast and drunk and feel like shit the next day
Mm,
because the sugar mixed with the alcohol, man, it sends your blood sugar on a roller coaster ride. It also hits you faster. The alcohol hits you faster, much faster when mixed with sugar. So those are two things to not mix together. Personally, I'll never drink a soda again in my life, and I don't think I have in probably 11 years. I'll have a Zevia, but I won't have any other sort of soda. And then for wine, I like to do the dry farm wines that they're curated from around the world, but they have like less than a gram of sugar in a whole bottle. Whereas even a very nice, expensive bottle of a red wine, 100 grams of sugar in a
Wow.
bottle. And guess what? When you drink the wines that are made the natural way that don't have the sulfites, the sulfates, and all the sugar, you don't even feel it. It's like a light, gentle buzz. And a bottle of that is like a glass of the other. It's really, really crazy. So when I see women, especially mixing all the sugary drinks and alcohol, and they wonder why they feel like shit the next day, and they get drunk fast, and that's why.
You look at the fruity cocktail menus
All those
and you're
pretty things.
all right, and you're looking at like, okay, this and that, and then you see some syrup. Whenever I see the word syrup,
Oh,
I'm like, absolutely not. I will not be doing whatever that is because I just know that just means a glob of sugar in my
oh, it
drink.
is 100%. And I'm actually glad you said that because that made me think of something. Agave nectar. That used to be touted as such a really healthy deal, and they still use it in a lot of, tequila drinks. But agave nectar is actually horrible, horrible on your glycemic index. Your blood sugar, it's absolutely not a good thing to put in your body. So I stay away from agave nectar as well. I like it. Look, I'm here in Texas, so I love a good, cucumber margarita on the rocks,
Mhm.
but I have them make it without the syrup. So there's other ways, if you're wanting good healthy drinks, some people aren't into sparkling waters and I get it. My husband, for example, he won't drink a regular sparkling water around the house, but he'll drink it mixed with a tequila or
Mm.
vodka, because those are the only two I'll ever consume if I drink. But, I'll just get like an orange or pineapple flavored sparkling water and then mix that with a flavored tequila or vodka. And then I feel special and it's like all spritzy and stuff.
Yeah. I just so appreciate you giving these alternatives too, because I think when people hear these kinds of conversations, they just hear, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And so this
Yes.
is very educational and informative and also helpful. Like, okay, well, I can't do that, but I can do, everything
There's
you
replacements for
suggested.
everything, right? And people focus on what they can't have instead focus on what you can have.
Hmm.
And also focus on what it is that you want, right? Because I will tell you this, and I tell my kids this all the time because as they get older and my oldest is about to be 16 and I lose control over what they eat and what they consume. And all I can do is teach them. And I tell them, look, I understand you think you can eat all this stuff and whatever. I can't control what you get at school, what your friends bring and things like that. But it's much, much harder to overcome a disease and to heal than to just keep your body healthy.
Mm, wow. That's very powerful, what you just said. And I think a lot of people, we so take our health for granted. It's never until I'm sick, coughing and sneezing where I'm like, okay, I will never take for granted, being able to breathe through my nose again. But in other extreme cases, where you have autoimmune diseases and you're very ill,
Mm.
we take it for granted, and so I'm just happy you said that, where it's like, keep your body healthy and functioning well, treat it good, treat it well, probably well is the
But
better.
no, you're right though. You get
Yeah.
one body and
Mm.
you know what? Everything you put in your body, maybe you don't feel it now. Maybe you're like, I can eat all that stuff and I feel fine. I'm going to tell you something. It always catches up. It really, really
Well,
does. And you don't know how it's going to be. And do you think I ever thought I was going to get sick with Lyme disease? Absolutely not. I never in my life thought I didn't even know a body could feel that sick. And when I look back now and I think about what I overcame, and and it was absolutely difficult, and that's why I do what I do, so other people don't have to do that. They don't have to feel that sick. And I think knowledge is really power, but I think if we could just make a few small tweaks in our life, top 3 things I would ever eliminate would be gluten, and sugar, and the artificial sweeteners, things like that. Those are absolutely horrible on your body. And you know what? One last thing people that I hear people do and see them do is they put their health to the side all the time. They kick it to the curb. It's like, well, on Monday, next year, next month, I have an event coming up. I'm going to look good for that. It's always just
Mm,
kicked down the road. But I'm like,
yeah.
you're talking about your damn health. It's your health. Stop kicking it to the side. It doesn't need to be Monday. It doesn't need to be next year. It just needs to be right now. Start making better decisions.
Totally. When I think of life, I think of a pyramid. You know those food pyramids. Actually, this is very relevant. The
Yeah.
food pyramids and the food groups. But when I think of it in a perspective of okay, what's a life pyramid? The very bottom,
Mm,
the foundation, health.
yes.
That should
Yeah.
be our first focus.
Yes. Your mindset and your health, that's everything. I wrote in my book about the path to freedom. It was the last chapter. The path to freedom is what we're all after. Freedom to be who you are, freedom to be yourself, freedom to do what it is you love to do, love who you love, freedom to live the life you want to live. That's what we're all after, every single one of us, right? And you got to break the chains, the invisible chains that hold you back. But my saying that I use all the time is when you heal your gut, you heal your brain, you heal your gut, you heal your health. But when you heal your mind, you free your life. So if you heal your gut and you heal your mind, you're going to live the life you want to live.
I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Gut health, really buzzy in the health industry right now, but it's always been important. Like just because we're just now, maybe it's more in pop culture that we're learning about it and gut health. I just want to know, why was it lesser known? Was it because we just had not as much access to nutritionists and health experts like yourself? Like, why was this never really addressed and then suddenly it's becoming addressed?
That's a great question. And that's one I've never been asked before. But I believe the answer has a lot to do with social media. Media controls everything. They just do. And on purpose, right? Um, and it all works. You go to the doctor and they have pharmacy companies that go by that want them to sell their prescriptions and you have your insurance and it all works together, right? This big
Yeah.
conglomerate. But here's the other thing, right? Is 10 years ago, well, 11 years ago, almost 12, when I got the bullseye rash, the reason I never really heard of functional medicine is social media wasn't nothing. It was nothing like it is now. Nothing at all. Podcast, all of it. It was there, but it wasn't really a thing, right? But as social media grew, I believe the answer is in social media. And the reason is because functional medicine's been around for a really long time. It really has. But those doctors, they don't. The insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, they don't make money off of functional medicine, right? Essential oils, they're not going to make any money off of getting rid of Lyme disease. But as social media started to grow and you got all these podcast things right there was no longer this control of what was out there. And so people are able to actually, nothing's stopping them. They're putting this information out there, right? And functional medicine starts to get known. I learned about functional medicine by reading a blog online, searching for ways to get well. And I read book after book after book. There was an Instagram. Hell, I wasn't even on Facebook at the time. So as social media has grown and podcasts and things like that, it's just out there. And now people are starting to understand and get it out there. You and I couldn't have had this conversation and had it out for the world 12 years ago. It's that people are able now to get the message out. And I believe that it's social media 100%.
Yeah. I do think it's changing the landscape too. I think people are really more keen to what is going on, like you said, the health industry with Big Pharma, and there really is no
Hmm.
money in healing. There's money in treating symptoms. And
Ah,
so,
there you go.
yeah, so if it's like the functional medicine, well, we're getting to the root pot of the root cause and we're actually healing you. Well, once someone's healed, they're not on the roster of prescription
There you go.
drugs and no one's making money. And I think a lot of people that
You are
no
a
one would
hundred
ever,
percent right. 100%.
well, and no one would admit that probably 12 years ago. But
Oh
now
no, no.
these are open conversations. People are kind of seeing like the wool has been lifted from our eyes. And we're like, oh,
It's not as easy for these huge corporations to hide. And when I say social media, I'm also referring to podcast. But then, I mean, hell, you talking about, just saying that right there with these big pharmacy companies and stuff like the Netflix documentaries that are on opioid crisis and things like that. When I say social media, it's podcasts, it's the documentaries that are coming out on all these other platforms, these viewing platforms. It's just that I feel like certain things can't be hidden anymore as easily, and they also now can't hide at the same time. So I think that it was easy for those bigger corporations, big pharma, all that. It was easier to hide. I think the functional medicine, the things that they were doing and stuff like that, and they can't now. When you watch some of these documentaries, I mean, oh, that's another episode. It's absolutely alarming. It's alarming what happens in the pharmaceutical industry and within our doctors and health insurance.
So I wanted to address, we talked about, gut health and what to avoid, which is definitely sugar, gluten you mentioned. What
Yeah.
are some foods to support our gut health? And I'm also curious your take on, if you want to go there, on big food as well, because I know that like more people are growing their own herbs and growing their own
Mhm.
tomatoes and growing because of the food industry. And we're kind of
Yeah.
learning, oh, they don't have our best interest either.
No. So it's not only what you don't put in your body, but it's also what you put in your body. So when I mentioned on purpose about 80% of your immune system's on your gut and most of your neurotransmitters are produced in your gut, because it's not just what you stop putting in your body and stop putting as much into your body, but it's going to be what you start to add in. So your gut health, it needs all those good microorganisms, right? Because not only does that help you feel good and produce all the good neurotransmitters you want, but it helps also to keep the bad pathogens from overgrowing. So when you eat cultured foods, like like food it's only sold in the cold sections, right? So sauerkraut in a can is not the same as sauerkraut in the cold section because cultures are alive, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
if they're in a can, they're not alive. So yogurts, but yogurts was without the added sugar, right? All the cultured foods like kimchi, now they got carrots and cucumbers and green beans and asparagus and sauerkraut. There's so many more options in cultured foods than there used to be. But you also want to make sure that you're putting some gut healing properties in your gut as well. So collagen, which you can get in powder form and add to your coffee or a smoothie or a shake. And then bone broth and things like that. You want to stay away from any sort of meats that are farm raised meats and things like that that were, the animals did not live in healthy conditions. They were pumped full of antibiotics and hormones, or hell, if it's a fish, even dies. And then you want to eat foods that are clean sources of foods, right? Some people think that meat is meat, but it's not. The meat you buy at HEB or whatever grocery store you have is not the same as the meat you're going to get at Whole Foods because there's just different ways that they're grown or they're produced, right? So you want to look for wild caught fish and um, poultry that was raised humanely and grass-fed beef and things like that. You are what your food eats, and that is the damn
Mm.
truth.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah.
if you watch, hell, just look it up on YouTube or Google about farm-raised fish. When you see how farm-raised fish are raised, you'll never touch it again. It's absolutely alarming. So, that's just something to think about. But, making sure you eat vegetables. People don't eat enough vegetables. I am amazed at, I work mostly with adults. I've worked with some teenagers and that I expect it from them. But I'm amazed about, adults that they don't eat vegetables. You need to eat your vegetables, guys. You need your phytonutrients. And then also, it's also a timing of your meals. So think about this. Every time you eat, your body has to digest, which is putting your body to work. If you're working on healing your gut, or overcoming a disease or something like that within your health, you need to stop giving your body so much to do because a lot more people have more sedentary jobs, right? We sit at our computers. We're not as active as we used to be. You're not burning as many calories, so you don't need to be consuming as many calories. Breakfast should not be a massive meal of the day. And the term breakfast is breaking your fast, right? Break fast, breakfast.
Oh,
And so
wow. I
if we
never thought of
can,
that. That's amazing.
that's what it is. And, the intermittent fasting, people have a misconception about what it is. And that's why I teach what break fast breakfast is. So the time you eat your dinner, like for me, I try to aim around 6 p.m. And so let's say 6 p.m. you eat your dinner, right? And then breakfast, you're like, well, I got to leave work and I need to have breakfast by 7 a.m. That's 11 hours. I'm sorry. That's 13 hours, right? You don't have to have that. And when you do break your fast, you don't want to break it with a bunch of carbs and juices and sugars and things like that. It really needs to be healthy fats and some protein. That's what it needs to be because your blood sugar is everything. So when you wake up in the morning, right? It's like a new day, set your blood sugar. And you wake up and you have your fruit juice or your sweetened creamers or things like that. And then you have a pastry or potatoes or whatever it is, your blood sugar automatically is going to start to just dip soon after. And then all day you're on this roller coaster ride of a blood sugar deal. So every time it dips, what are you going to do? Like, there's Raven again, going to get another snack. Because when our blood sugars dip, that's what we do. And that's why you hear people in the afternoon that have the slump, the afternoon slump.
Mm.
And the reason is because they go eat, they normally eat something crappy for breakfast. Maybe it's just a small thing, but it's a granola bar, right? And it's got 25 carbs in it. That's not necessary unless you're about to go run a marathon. So breakfast really just needs to be, I like to do MCT oil in my coffee. So MCT is medium chain triglyceride. That is a fatty acid that's super healthy, derived from coconut oil. But you know what it does? It helps curb your appetite. It's very satiating, right? Because it's a healthy fat. And so it burns very slowly, but it also helps increase your metabolism. And for anyone who's doing keto, it helps you maintain ketosis. And so I like to have healthy fats and a little bit of protein in the morning. Lunch, lunch is that's what I call your power meal, right? Lunch should be where you're really getting the food you need to power for the rest of your day. And that's where that needs to be your bigger meal of the day. People have it backwards and they do dinner. Dinner should not be your biggest meal of the day. It needs to be lunch. Lunch is where you can throw in a little bit in larger quantities, but not too much because you don't want to overeat. You don't want to give your body more to digest than it can. Because you know what happens to undigested food? It sits in your gut and it rots and it leads to gut dysbiosis, which leads to leaky gut, which leads to autoimmune diseases. It's like a domino effect. But if you want to have your carbs, stick to your healthy carbs, right? Your complex carbs, or if you want to have a little bit of the starches, right? That's a good time to have it because why? Because after lunch, that's typically when people are just go, 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 and you're doing the most and you're the most productive. So you need more energy for that. But then dinner needs to be our lightest meal of the day and typically not too high in the carbs. And always 3 hours minimum before bedtime. Because the more you eat at dinner and the closer it is to bedtime, right? Think about this. Digestion is a north to south process, right? So if you lay down, it's a little harder for it to do north to south, right? It's more east to west, and that's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, what are you doing after dinner? Most people are going to be sitting, laying, relaxing. So what are you eating that big old meal for? Because all it's going to do is it's going to just sit in your gut and it's going to rot. It's going to throw off your sleep patterns. It's going to
Mhm.
give you some maybe not so comfortable digestion issues or maybe some embarrassing ones if you have a partner. And and then it throws off how you feel the next day. So dinner needs to be our lightest meal of the day. And then taking probiotics, make sure you take probiotics and make sure you take digestive enzymes. Give your body some extra tools to help break down the foods properly. Like I said, if you don't break down foods properly, they're just going to sit in your gut and rot. And that sounds gross. And it is gross.
You mentioned leaky gut.
Mm-hmm.
That's when food is rotting and then can you break this down a
Yeah.
bit?
So undigested food, right? It can cause gut dysbiosis because your body can only digest so much, right? And people always more and more people today are dealing with constipation or diarrhea, right? Which diarrhea is a form of constipation. Most people don't know that. But what happens is when you start to get gut dysbiosis and you start to get these overgrowth of pathogens and things in your gut, you get leaky gut, right? So I know people can only hear me, but just like your hand, right? Have your hand as gets your all your fingers are closed nice and tight together, right? That's your gut lining. But as you start to get leaky gut, it's like your fingers slowly start coming apart. That's the lining of your gut. Well, things are slipping through there, right? Food particles, things like that, and they get into your bloodstream. This is where you can have the beginning of autoimmune diseases. So your gut health, your gut lining, that's your key to your health right there. I had horrible gut dysbiosis and leaky gut when I was so sick with Lyme disease. And your gut lining, the thing is your cells reproduce constantly. And so if you work on healing your gut, which by the way, your gut loves collagen and bone broth and things like that. If you work on doing that, then you start to get rid of these food intolerances. You have so many people that have these food intolerances right now, right? More than ever, especially in kids. I can't send my kids to school with anything with peanuts. That wasn't the case I'm 42, but I didn't have that issue when I was a kid in school where I couldn't take peanuts to school or certain other nuts and things, but not today. And that's a lot of that has to do with because when women are pregnant, right? They're not eating healthy. They're taking antibiotics and all this other stuff. And and it causes these issues in these kids. And then the kids are born and then they're on antibiotics and then they're eating crap foods. And then that's why we have all these food intolerances. Food intolerances are typically created from a leaky gut. And then you have a domino
Wow.
effect and you have autoimmune diseases.
Okay, it really all makes sense. It makes sense, and I'm so happy you're
Doesn't
here
it?
to break it
Your
all
gut health is
down and
everything.
yeah. So here's just like a quick what I've gathered from this and just for the listener to really break it down. You go into a grocery store, reach for the section where they've got the misters, all your veggies, they're fresh and it's a little chillier because you're getting wet, but it's
Yeah.
fine. So reach for foods like that. What's your take on organic? Does that mean anything different?
It
Like,
really does, and it's what they call, like, the dirty dozen, right? And it's hell, you can look it up. I have some stuff on my website, but you can look it up. Basically, if you're eating the skin, okay, so people think organic is just a fancy, expensive term. It does cost more, and I gotta say this, right? This really pisses me off. The healthier foods are more expensive. The foods that are the worst for you, they're gonna cause diseases and all sorts of disorders. They're the cheapest. What a coincidence, huh? It costs more to eat healthy, but let me tell you what costs more: health problems and disease.
mhm.
So spend the money on buying the better foods, on the cleaner meats. If you're eating, and I understand, I got 3 kids. I do. And I'm a single mom and I work my ass off. I fucking get it. I do. But I will tell you this much. I've also overcome the impossible by overcoming Lyme disease. And I understand the difference in healthy foods. And I would rather make the little bit of a sacrifice and buying the foods that are healthier than ever having to overcome a disease again. Now, you don't have to buy everything organic. And let me tell you something else: frozen foods, frozen vegetables, those are great. They were once alive, they're just frozen. Frozen vegetables are fine. But if you're eating the skin on something, definitely buy organic because like a banana, I don't care if they're organic or not. I'm not eating the damn skin. I'm not eating the pill, right? But if not, then you're definitely getting all the pesticides and things like that. So it's
Okay.
important to buy organic when it comes to your produce if you're eating the skin. And then on your meats, like farm raised fish, please don't. Pork products, you really want to buy humanely raised pork products. Pork is one of the dirtiest meats to consume. So I love pork, but I buy really, really, really clean brands of pork. Applegate's a good brand. There's a ton of them. Epic is another one. There's a bunch of really good pork products. But if you're eating a product where the pig was just stuffed full of hormones and antibiotics and all sorts of other things, it's in that skin, it's in that tissue, and then you're consuming it.
Janna, you've been so gracious with your time.
Oh, absolutely.
I
I love talking about this and I like educating.
I have one final question for you that I'm really curious to hear your take on before we sort of get your details and where people can find you. But
All right.
my question is Does our gut health affect our gut instincts or intuition, do you think?
Ooh, that's a really good one. I like that question. And that's another one I haven't been asked before. I think that it does a little bit. And I'm only saying that from my personal experience being asked that the first time. And here's why is because I know when my version of eating unhealthy is very different, but I know when I eat unhealthy, which is typically around the Christmas time with the kiddos, I notice I just feel foggier and I'm less aware. And so I believe that it does. And I think that makes sense because when you eat unhealthy and you overeat and you're overdoing the carbs and the things with sugar and all that kind of stuff, you get a little bit of brain fog. You just do naturally, right? And when you have a little brain fog, I think that we procrastinate and I think we just don't think things through enough because it's kind of like it's almost like you're just in a fog. Like you think about like when you just wake up. If someone
Mm,
asks you a really deep question when you wake up or like, "Hey, what do you want to do this weekend?" You're like, "I don't know. Where's my coffee? I'm asleep."
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
I think it does. That's a great question. I think that you'll be more aware and pay attention more to your gut when your gut's healthier because your brain health is your brain health is better. You're not trying to break through the fog to think
Yeah.
about something.
So, how can listeners who are discovering you, they want to learn more from you, they want to work with you, where can they find you? I know you've got your book, you've got your podcast, so, and obviously social media. So, let us know where they can follow you.
Absolutely. I'm on pretty much all social media, but I'm the most active on Instagram. And I have my website, Revived by Janna, JANNA.com. And I have a weekly newsletter that I send out that's got all sorts of tips and tricks like I shared today. My podcast is Revive with Janna because I like to confuse people. And my book, my book released January 11th for 111 is Unfuck Your Mind by Janna Johnson. So that's where you can find me at.
Wonderful, amazing. You shared so much wisdom, great insights. I mean, I really just enjoyed picking your brain and learning all about gut health and everything in your perspectives on everything. So
Well, thank
thank you
you.
so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you for giving me this platform to just educate and share.
Wasn't that amazing? Like, I just feel so much more enlightened after that conversation. It makes me want to take my food, my health seriously. It makes me want to schedule those doctor's appointments that I've been putting off because, again, like we hit on in the episode, it's better to be proactive about our health instead of reactive. It's better to stay healthy than try to figure out how to heal our bodies. So, thank you so much again to Janna for being on the Astro Guinea podcast, sharing her wealth, her health of knowledge. It really was just so amazing for me, and I hope for you too. If you want to connect with Janna, I know she mentioned it, but I linked her website, her book, her podcast, her Instagram in the show notes. So find her there. And you can also find ways to connect with Astro Candy. Right now, I am loving our newsletter. It's like the Astro Candy magazine, essentially, straight to your email every Monday. It's incredible. So if you haven't signed up for this yet, I really encourage you to. I put the link in the show notes. Again, free. I talk about everything from what's happening in the stars to what's happening in pop culture as it relates to astrology. And it's just really fun. So I would love for you to opt in and we can connect that way. All right. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week and I will see you next week. Bye.